This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
Yesterday, I reported on the story of a priest in Spain who refused communion to the mayor of a town. That mayor just happened to be a proud member of the James Martin Brigade. The mayor in question is an unrepentant public sinner. We're not talking about somebody who carries the cross of an affliction that they have, that they don't want, that they choose to live the way the church teaches us to live. No, we're talking about an unrepentant public sinner who thinks the church is evil and discriminating against them. The priest denied him Holy Communion, and as a consequence, the state tried to cancel him. The story's taken on a life of its own, and there are some developments in the story, so let's get right to it. From Info Vaticana, with the headline, "Brave statement from the Diocese of Segovia in defense of the priest who denied communion to the hammer and sickle mayor of the town." Again, this is from the bishop's office, but I'm not going to use their summary. I'm going to actually go here to the actual diocesan website. For the statement on reception of Holy Communion, it's not long. But it's nice to see that the bishop stood up and said something, because most of the time, what do we see? Whenever a priest gets himself in a little bit of hot water with the outside world, they release these mealy-mouthed kind of things. This is not exactly the strongest statement ever, but this is stronger than most statements we've seen in any other kind of situation like this. And I'm going to show you the interesting language used here that helps to show what this is about, because this is a frankly anti-Catholic thing that mayor is trying to do. So here's the bishop's statement. In response to the news published by some media outlets about the refusal to receive communion in some parishes in our province, the Diocese of Segovia wishes to state the following. The request of the Socialist Party of Segovia in its statement addressed the new Bishop of Segovia to end discrimination based on the inclinations of the flesh in the diocesan church constitutes a defamatory judgment of the Catholic community of the diocese. Keep that word in your memory. Based on poorly verified news about the actions of the priest. He, in the fulfillment of his ministry and following the regulations of the Universal Church on the reception of Holy Communion, has been forced to deny communion to persons of the James Martin persuasion who live in a marital manner, which can also occur between normal types of persons without a marital bond. This is not a fear of that group or discrimination, since communion is not denied because of their inclination, but because of defending the sacred character of the Eucharist. This is kind of disappointing here a little bit, right? Again, we're not talking about the people who have the inclination but live as the church commands them to live, carry their cross. Those are saints, or at least evidence that there are saints among us. But, he's being a little mealy-mouthed here on this. This declaration represents an unacceptable interference in the church's own affairs, an attack on religious freedom guaranteed by the Constitution of Spain. Catholics know that in order to receive the Eucharist, whatever their inclination, objective conditions on morality are required, and the church has the authority to deny communion when these are not met, especially if it causes scandal among the faithful, as has happened in the Segovia cases. This is stated in the Code of Canon Law in Canon 915. Pope Francis himself in Fiducia Supplicans states that blessing such couples should be avoided if it causes, quote, serious forms of scandal or confusion among the faithful. This is even more true if it's a matter of sacramental communion. Again, this is like the one rational line in the Fiducia Supplicans, because it should always cause serious scandal among the faithful, always. But it doesn't in most places. To say that the Church of Segovia is afraid of the crowd in question for protecting the sacred character of the Eucharist is an unacceptable judgment. Again, note the language here. The denial of communion does not in any way mean exclusion from ecclesial life or from participation in its worship, since the church encourages those who for various reasons cannot access communion to continue participating in the life of the community. On the other hand, there are numerous magisterial documents in which the church expressly states that such persons must be treated with respect for their condition and that they are members of the church, which does not mean that they can access the Eucharist without respecting the norms of law that apply to all the faithful, meaning to live as the church commands you to live, not engaging in those sins. We urge the party in question of Segovia to retract its public statement of discrimination in the Segovia church based on inclinations of the flesh without precise knowledge of the events that occurred, and with ideological motivations that go against the teachings of the Catholic Church on this matter. And again, they're using the word discrimination. this language that's being used in all of this is very key to understanding what's going on. Note the use of the word defamatory and similar language here. Again, the language is key. The priest and the diocese are being accused of committing a crime motivated by hate. That's a big deal in the European Union, as such statutes are actually enforced in Spain. This is an attempt to invoke the language of the law to get the state to come down on the Catholic Church, not just against this priest or against the bishop, but the Catholic Church. If taken seriously, action can be taken by the church in Spain over the issue. Now, I don't think it will be, however, because again, the international community, and especially the EU these days, does take kind of a dim view of the state trying to do what Spain did to the church in the 1920s and 30s. The current makeup of the EU isn't interested in revisiting some of the worst times in 20th century European history. But this is made clear in a secular article on the story. So we go here to it doesn't get much more secular than this outlet here, the Telegraph, with this headline: Church accused of crime motivated by mean thoughts after banning James Martin type mayor from Mass. It wasn't again banned from Mass, it was from receiving the Eucharist. It's a different thing. Catholic priest threatened with legal action after priest allegedly blocked James Martin pairings. Again, multiples. This is not the first time he's done this, from receiving communion. Please say a prayer for this priest because he's one of the good ones, because he was doing his job. He was preventing people from committing sacrilege, from eating and drinking their own condemnation. Wish we had more priests like that. Here are the details, because what you're going to see here is an attempt to show that this is a systemic problem with this priest and by extension with the Catholic Church. And notice the framing: Spain's Catholic Church. Again, Spain's Catholic Church has been accused of a crime motivated by hate after a mayor of the James Martin persuasion claimed that he had been banned from receiving communion by his priest. Ruben Garcia de Andres, the socialist mayor of Toro Caballeros near Segovia, posted on X that the village priest had barred him from Holy Communion for his inclinations for living with the partner outside of the bonds of holy matrimony. Mr. Garcia de Andres is a practicing Catholic. I would dispute that, and had previously been a lay preacher in Toro Caballeros until he claims that role was taken away from him 2 years ago for the same reason. His party appealed to the church authorities to overrule the priest or face a possible prosecution for crime motivated by such, for discriminating against a person because of their inclinations of the flesh. Again, they're willing to bring this practicing Catholic is willing to bring the wrath of the state down on the church, the Catholic Church in the country. It would be bad enough if it was against just the priest, or bad enough if it was against just the bishop, but he's willing to bring the wrath of the state down against the church in the country. Nobody wants to go down that road, the party leader says. The party leader asked Jesus Vidal Chamorro, the incoming Bishop of Segovia, to overturn the ban on the mayor and another James Martin pairing in the area. Also claimed they have been prevented from taking Mass. Again, it's receiving the Eucharist. You can tell someone who's not a Catholic wrote this article. But the Bishop of Segovia defended itself, saying in a statement that the priest had acted not out of fear of such, but following the canons of the Catholic Church, under which any couple living outside of holy matrimony, including natural couples, can be refused the sacrament. This is not a fear or discrimination, since communion is not denied on the basis of their inclination, but rather to defend the sacred character of the Eucharist, the statement read. In fact, it goes over how this, again, isn't the first time this has happened. There are multiple instances of this. Again, this is a recurring problem, and that's why the U.S. State Department, which is not a Catholic institution by any stretch, issued in 2022 this report on international religious freedom for Spain. We're not going to go over the whole thing. We're going to go over a couple parts of it, though, to show you this is not an isolated problem in Spain, to the point where American citizens are advised about this, and because it's the State Department of the global mega power, Spain was put on notice in 2022, by the way, just to give you an idea. If you think about who was running the country at the time, the people behind this statement, that's saying something when you've got them saying, hey, guys, right? So here's the executive summary. The Constitution of Spain guarantees freedom of religion and prohibits discrimination based on religion. It is a crime to prevent or disrupt religious services or to offend or scorn religious beliefs. That's key in the story. Ceremonies or practitioners. By law, the definition of a crime motivated by hate includes acts of humiliation or disrespect based on the religion of the victim. When the law provides that no religion shall have a state character, the government has cooperative relations with religious faiths. The government's bilateral agreements with the Holy See grants the Catholic Church additional benefits not available to the three other groups in which it has agreements, which is the Crescent Moon worshippers, Protestants, and our so-called elder brothers in the faith. Groups without agreements may register with the government and receive some benefits. In October, the Supreme Court of Spain ruled that a municipality in Cantabria violated the fundamental rights of citizens by passing a boycott, divestment, and sanctions resolution in 2016. The ruling established a precedent nationwide that resolution is in fact illegal. The Supreme Court of the region of Murcia ruled in February that the local government violated the right to freedom of religion in failing to provide the Crescent Moon followers studies, courses, and schools. You get the idea. Multiple human rights NGOs stated that part of the penal code that criminalizes offending religious sentiments unduly restricted freedom of expression. The Ministry of the Presidency convened the first meeting of the Advisory Committee on Religious Freedom since 2019. The Governmental Pluralism and Coexistence Foundation expanded a program with local governments to promote religious diversity and protect religious freedom. The Ministry of the Interior implemented a new action plan outlining concrete measures to address crimes of this kind, including crimes committed on the basis of religious belief. So, this is where it gets interesting. See, the status of government respect for religious freedom. It's here that you're going to see both the attempt by the mayor and, of course, the church trying to defend itself. It's why I kept saying, note the language used by both cases. Defamatory, discrimination, yada, yada, yada. They say the Constitution prohibits discrimination based on religion and provides for freedom of religion and worship for individuals and communities. The Constitution states no one may be compelled to testify about his or her religion or beliefs. It's nice that they do protect that by the way, would protect the sacrament of penance. Thanks be to God. It also states, quote, no religion shall have a state character, but public authority shall take into account the religious beliefs of Spanish society and consequently maintain appropriate cooperative relations with the Catholic Church and other denominations. The Catholic Church is the only religious group explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. Under the Penal Code, it is a crime to prevent or disrupt religious services or to offend or scorn religious beliefs, ceremonies, or practitioners. The Constitution allows limits on expression if necessary to maintain public order. And this is where the mayor may run into trouble. He said he accused the institution of being evil, basically. A practicing Catholic, by his own description, accused the Catholic Church of being evil. We'll see what happens with this case. That's why it's worth following as it develops. And then it goes on to what happens if you violate the law. The Penal Code's definition of such crimes include acts of humiliation or disrespect, hello, Mr. Mayor, against victims because of their religion, with penalties of 1 to 4 years. Having, we'll say, hate for our so-called elder brothers is specifically defined in the Penal Code as such a crime. By law, authorities may investigate and prosecute criminal offenses committed by, we'll call them throwback groups to the bad guys of the 1940s, and et cetera, et cetera. In fact, it also, the big bad event of the 1940s, if you don't say it was real, you can get in serious trouble in that country. It does not it goes on and on and on. This is actually a fairly long thing, but what it really does do is protect both your individual religious sentiment and beliefs, but also the institutions. This is where the story gets weird, because the mayor of that town is trying essentially to say that his human rights were violated and that the state should force the church to give communion. That's nuts. That's extremely nuts, right? But that's what they're going for. Meanwhile, the bishop is invoking the Constitution as the defense mechanism against what that mayor is doing. So I'm curious what you think about this. All right, folks, thanks very much for tuning in today. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.